Your Story. That is going to be April 23rd through the 24th. This one is going to be located at the Morongo Casino. And then next we have our ACORNS CITE annual resource meeting. That is going to be June 11th through the 12th. It is going to be at Yakima Indian Education Center. You guys have already received that link for the Eventzilla. So I need folks to go through there and sign up. If you do not need a hotel, just state that no hotel is needed. But I want you to register through there so we know what types of materials, how much food to have. And then let's see. So then we're going to go into our shout outs.
Can I just add one thing?
Yes.
So for the 2019 data evaluation and grant writing, that's being put on by another grant, but it is for us as grantees. And but there is funding to send one person from each of the programs for that. So that includes travel, hotel, per diem, and lodging. So if that one's like a little bit further away, it's in Southern California, but there is funding for one person from each program to go. So maybe you can't go personally, but if there's somebody else from your organization that you do want to send, just know that there is money for that. You don't need to use your own grant budget. And then for trauma-informed wellness, definitely if you are a CRIB member or an associate member, there is funding to have you go to that for lodging and per diem. If you are, and up to 4 people per program, so you'll kind of need to work amongst yourselves between different grants. If you are not a CRIB member, but you are really interested in going to that, let me know, and we can try to see if there's something that we can work out if you need help with lodging or travel. So both of those need to be registered for. Those are coming up quickly. And so, yeah, just know that there is some money to help people attend those meetings. That's all.
Thank you for that, Miss Geneva. So we would like to start out with a couple of shout outs. So for Northern Valley Indian Health, they had a motivational interviewing training with Miss Gail Zapita for their CHRs as they are working on strengthening the role of their CHRs in their communities. And then I also have one for Cold Springs. They installed 2 of their 4 solar lights, exercise equipment and benches. Now their outdoor basketball court and exercise area can be used as a place to gather and play even after dark. Over to you, Mr. Ephraim.
All right, that sounds awesome. Thanks for that, Julie. So for CITE, I have some shout outs and recognition to give out to. So the first one is for Miss Jamali Austin from Lake County Tribal Health Consortium. She was the first person to turn in her progress report for the first progress reports. Yeah. You can see the team is excited about that. We love seeing work get done early, and that helps us, on our end also give you guys back your your end of the stuff sooner rather than later, which we can all agree about. The other one is for Cloverdale Rancheria. They actually had someone quit smoking commercial tobacco. So good job to you guys. That's what we would like to see, and that's what we're really all working towards. So when we all see results, I'm sure you guys on your end are excited, but we're excited for you guys too. And we kind of get super excited in our own meetings, and we're like, anyway, we're excited for you guys too. So that's it on my end for recognition for this time. Do any of you guys have any shout outs or recognitions to give out to any tribes you've been working with, or anyone in your own organization that deserves a special shout out? You guys can just hop on in and unmute yourselves, or you can go ahead and say it in the chat box also.
So that's good. My only question that is, I guess this is Chris Hamlin from Rishibishi. We had an awesome turnout for one of our communities. At Saboba, we did a food demo, and it was focused on, of course, bringing a lot of healthier food ideas to kids in the communities. And it was really great because the kids, I mean, they jumped on the different options that we presented to them. I know a lot of times when you try to give a teenager a healthy snack, they might look at you funny, but it was awesome to see them really energetic about trying things that would obviously give them a healthier perspective on healthy snacks.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing, Chris.
No problem.
What were some of the things that you shared, and what did people like the most?
Oh man, I should have had my little quiz I gave them afterwards with them. Let me think here. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Let me get back to you. I'm gonna mute it and then look for it real quick.
Oops. Does anyone else have anything to share? All right, so we are going to move on into our presentation. I would like to introduce our presenter today, our very own ACORNS evaluator, Mr. Eugene Hahn. Take it away, Eugene.
Thank you, Julie. Hello, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you for checking in for this webinar. We're just going to get right started. Chris, did you want to give us that update? Did you find that by any chance? Or?
Vicky Macias in the chat said that they scheduled their first yoga class, which is super exciting at their wellness center.
Nice, nice. I'm trying to figure out how to minimize the video here so I can actually look at my desktop where I have it.
No worries. Okay, well, I'm just going to get started with the presentation. Everyone can see the screen, right? Yes? Alrighty, we're just going to go right in. So today's webinar is about tracking and evaluation, and we're going to be discussing just collecting, understanding, and showing the data information that you're collecting for your projects. So an overview of today, we're going to have an introduction to evaluation, how you are collecting information, evaluating your findings, and showing your work. And we'll have a little review session and time for questions as well. So diving right in, the basics of evaluation. So evaluation is an effective program evaluation is a systematic way to improve and account for public health actions by involving procedures that are useful, feasible, ethical, and accurate. So you really want to focus on the last four words, making sure that, you know, the things that you are evaluating, that you're evaluating with, you know, making sure that it's useful information, that it's accessible and that it's easy, and that you're doing it correctly. And so there's like an ethical component to it. And then most importantly, that it is accurate. You just do not want, you know, misinformation. So a good example would be like, we have like an old light bulb, you know, and that's your health programs. And then by evaluating them, you're making them not only better, but more efficient and, you know, functioning better. So put simply, program evaluation is using a standardized method to analyze a program to make it better. The whole point of evaluation is honestly to make things just more efficient and better working, easier for everyone. So the basic steps of evaluation include, for this presentation, 3 components. So we're going to have tracking, so tracking your information and data, and then analyzing your information, making sure you're collecting it and analyzing it correctly. And lastly is reporting/dissemination. So making sure that once you've collected and analyzed your information, that you're able to distribute it to all the people, all the stakeholders involved. So a big thing is, initially when you are evaluating a program, you want to form questions that will help you reach your goals. And so initially when you have your work plan or whatever, and you have these ideas and goals and objectives you want to complete, you want to also make questions that help you get to those milestones. These questions should be measurable. They should be clear and concise as possible. And so using these questions, you'll be able to better evaluate your program and achieve your program goals. So first, with tracking, we have outcomes and evaluation forms. And that I thought was the best way to kind of capture for ACORNS and CITE what information you're actually tracking and collecting. You do this by using tracking software, such as in the form of like Excel spreadsheet or different, like if you use perhaps SurveyMonkey to collect information data, you would use that as an analysis tool. You can also use like paper, sign-in sheets. Those are really good ways to kind of, just manually write down and collect information. And lastly is observe participation. So this is also the thing where when we're evaluating, we really want to focus on accuracy and efficiency. And so if you can do that by observation, it is a lot easier for everyone. Like let's say, for example, you're hosting a meeting at your clinic, and instead of having a sign-in sheet, you just kind of, for counts, you just kind of count off how many people are there. You never really had to involve them, and you can kind of just do that very uninvasively. Conversely, if you did want to have like information about them, like you wanted to follow up with communication afterwards, so you need their contact info, or if you wanted to get more metadata about, their stats such as like age or kind of how many meetings they've attended. Those are things that you can do by having more developed tracking sheets. So tracking continued. I would say that for everyone, Excel is the best way to kind of track information. The reason why I say this is because it is very accessible and universal for everyone. Almost every workstation has access to Excel, and so it makes it a tool that everyone can use and everyone can operate. I can make a tool here, send it over to you, and you have Excel, so you'd be able to use it. Also, like, it would be accessible to all your team members, so if you created something, everyone on your team could have access to it. Versus there are other programs that are more like rigorous with statistical analysis. However, those are less accessible for all people. So using Excel, you can do a variety of things. Specifically with ACORNS and CITE, I found that these would be the most helpful things that you'd be able to utilize it for. So survey response, grant funding, project completion status, community participation, team task list tracking, and anything basically documentable would be able to be put into Excel. If you can, write about it, you can most likely kind of aggregate that data and put it in Excel into a way that you can analyze and then disseminate later on. Does anyone have any questions as of right now so far? No? Okay, moving on. So an example of a tracking sheet that I created for ACORNS and CITE, this is just, I threw something together on Excel, and we can see, like, can you guys see my mouse? Yes, okay, cool. So, you just kind of format the boxes however you want to format it. You can make it pretty, or you can make it as basic as possible. And from here, I have like location, title, presenters, event type, and then I have drop-down menus with names. And so when I use this, if I just kind of write down the names and put in the corresponding site names, it'll give me a count of how many people are attending automatically. And then it'll also, on another page that I have, spreadsheet, it'll show other data with how many people from each site are attending certain events. So this kind of analysis is helpful in determining, maybe in the next year of funding, or like to see in the next quarter of your events, like what worked, what time of day worked best, how many people attended when it was in the morning versus the afternoon, or if it was this, like if it was nutrition versus chronic disease. Just kind of getting that information and then be able to analyze it and use it for future decisions. So we have kind of just basic information that you can collect right here, auto-generated counts, and then also just kind of metadata about who's coming, where they're from, and other information that you would want to add on to. Another example would be a satisfaction feedback survey. So for us specifically at ACORNS and CITE, we use this format a lot when we're collecting information about just how well the webinar or meeting or whatever we presented went. And the questions, we want to make sure that the survey doesn't take as, you don't want to give them like a 3-page survey. You want to give them something that's quick, but then that kind of gives you all the information that you need. So really focusing on efficiency. And so what information are you trying to collect? That was the first thing we talked about. That's very important in achieving your program goals. And then what is the most efficient way to ask that question? These are just very quick kind of usefulness of the session. So you can mark, excellent all the way through poor. And is it clear and understandable? And I would say that, these 5 questions overall just are very clear, concise, and that you can get through the survey in probably less than a minute. But for us, it gives us more than enough information with regards to if we're doing our job correctly, as well as receiving feedback and providing like a place for comments where they can provide what really is on their mind. So using that example survey sheet, I just kind of transferred it over to Excel. And let's say, for example, we had 20 people attend a event. And so once I've collected all of the surveys, I can kind of manually count all the responses and just kind of put them in. And this becomes a standardized form of documentation. So if there's 20 responses, I kind of we had a sample size of 20, and then I made sure that all of these columns and rows added up to 20. And that way I knew that I didn't miss any numbers. And then from this, I also, on the comment section, I kind of put in, whatever comments people put from the surveys we collected. And you can list all these down. And then you can kind of read through them, and using different programs or even using like a word cloud, you can kind of see what are the popular comments and what things people liked and what things people didn't like. And by doing this, you really get to easily store your information. It's organized, it's clear, it's clean, and it's just ready for analysis. By doing this, you can kind of see all the data that you need really quickly. And also, for this example, you can also aggregate data over time. So if you want to see your overall kind of rating for surveys in regards to like webinars, for example, I can do it for maybe at the end of the year, we'll have a total of like 300 responses or something like that for all the webinars. I can break it down not only by specific webinar and events, but I can also see kind of an average of how we did it throughout the year. I can also break it down regionally, or I could break it down time-wise. And so just kind of using the data and kind of playing with it to figure out the questions that you're asking. So next, this also goes into, by having the data in this format, you can easily generate visual data. So Excel is a great tool in kind of taking this information, and honestly, it literally is just like highlighting the cells that I want, and then creating a bar chart, for example. Bar charts, I really enjoy bar charts just because they are quick. They kind of just show what the majority of people like and didn't like. So you can see kind of from this bar chart that the best rated section was inclusion of culture. People really, thought that all of that was excellent. Versus the usefulness of the session may have been different. They thought that, maybe only 3/4 of the people actually found the session to be extremely useful, and then others kind of felt it to be just more so good or neutral or even poor. And so this is good data for yourself in kind of making decisions for how you're going to be leading future programs and stuff like that, but also when you're reporting and taking this information up the ladder. So especially for us, like in my position, when we collect your progress reports and we collect your final reports and look at your outcomes and evaluation, I aggregate all that information and then send it over to the CDC to make sure that, to justify why we're getting this funding and why it's important, all the things, amazing things that you guys are doing. You guys can develop your internal capacity by practicing these things and these skills and then taking it to your leadership, maybe at your tribal council or your whoever may be leading your tribal health program. And so you can also do dashboards and different kind of things with Excel to have live counts and have visuals like ongoing throughout the program. So for example, we have, this is ours specifically, we have a participation log. And so this is kind of, I don't think this is the one we're actually using, I just kind of mocked this up, but it shows how many people, let's say, for example, are attending each event. So subcontractors, total participation, and then the types of meetings that we're hosting, how many people by region are attending, and then this one's not filled, but total participants and just kind of the names of the events and dates. And this is all automatic. I actually don't have to play with this. Like, I'm not entering any of this data manually. If I go back to kind of this slide right here, using like Excel spreadsheets and sheets like these, I can have it automatically compile into my dashboard once I make new events. And so that could be really easy with just kind of having team members check this. And if, like, let's say, for example, Julie kind of needed to see a number or account for a certain tribe, then she can just kind of hop on this and look at those numbers and see what we need to do. Does anyone have any questions about this? No? No questions? With just kind of like a, would anyone feel comfortable?
Eugene, this is Jamali.
Hi,
Can you hear
Jamali.
me?
Yes.
Hi. I'm not sure how from Excel, you were able to transfer that data.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a special webinar we should do on Excel to know how to connect those different tables so that when you enter in one, it shows in the other one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something that we could definitely do in the future. Obviously, I'm kind of, you know what, we could actually kind of pop out for a second and see this. Let's see. Okay, everyone see this Excel doc? It's kind of loading right now. Whoops. Okay, here we go. So, so this, for example, is how it looks for us. So we have, I've kind of created this resource where I can manually put in all the survey results. We could find an average response. We could see all the people that attended, and then all that is kind of drop-down menu. And so these different sheets that I created for different webinars and events and meetings, they will automatically kind of aggregate into this format. So this is just kind of, I don't have to play with any of these numbers. These just kind of come in. So like, let's say the count 20 is here, and then, you know, it will just automatically keep adding participants. So if I added, let's say, another person, and they're from Big Valley, then this number would go up and stuff like that. This is something, I guess, that's you could kind of figure out, but we can definitely have like an Excel training in the future to go over how to make something like this. Maybe not as maybe not just like this, but something maybe basic or pretty similar to kind of capture all the things that you need.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah. So moving on, so after you've gotten all this information and you have analyzed it, it's really important to focus on reporting and dissemination. I think that this is probably one of the most important components of evaluation just because it really, you can collect all the information in the world and turn it into data and analyze it and, you know, make the prettiest reports and infographics. But if you don't share it and no one sees it, does it even matter? Is it really doing anything? So reporting and dissemination is a huge component that you should focus on. So I have two examples here. The left side is ACORNS and CITE infographic that we created here. And it just kind of goes over just basic things that, you know, ACORNS year 4 summary, ACORNS CITE year 4 summary, and different program areas that we're working on. So anyone that could pick it up could just, you know, easily look at what we're doing, you know, learn about ACORNS and CITE, and then just learn about the program. Conversely, another form of reporting is, this is like a screenshot of my report for CDC. So when Geneva and I are writing our report for the end of the year, we have this huge Microsoft document where to answer a bunch of questions and fill out all the boxes. And this is like just a section from the qualitative indicators where we kind of free response all the things that we're doing. And that is also an option. And both of these are important in different ways. Infographics are very accessible. They're easy. They're visually stimulating. I mean, which one do you want to read, the left or the right? But then, you know, a lot of information can be stored in the right side. And this is a much more formal report used often, you know, formal settings. I would not send this to, you know, a bunch of strangers and be like, hey, read through my 20-page report and learn about our program, versus I'm going to find the most interesting things, make it pretty little infographic, and then be like, hey, read the bare minimum to try to figure out what we're doing here and learn about all our successes. So just really understanding your audience. So that is actually the first thing. We're going to focus on the 3 principles of dissemination. And the first one is type of information. So the type of information is, what is the most important data to share? What data do stakeholders want to receive? And interesting information is the key to receptiveness. So this kind of goes hand in hand with audience, which is the next section, but it is really important to understand that the data that you're sharing should be very important information, very interesting information. The rest of it is kind of fluff. It's unnecessary, and often, you know, I'm such a stickler for efficiency that, you know, if I only have to read one paragraph versus a full page, I will always choose to do that one paragraph. Obviously, if I'm going to miss things that I need to know, then I'll read the full page. But you really want to make the information as concise as possible, because that's what's going to make it as receptive. And different people have different kind of perspectives on that. So this is a little paint drawing that I made. Preparing for your target audience. And so adjusting the level of technical information to match your audience, and understanding your audience's ability to access the information. So going back to like the formal report that I had written, you know, I'm not going to give that to someone who maybe would not be familiar with the formal report. I write that because I know that it's going to a CDC correspondent or CDC officer. Versus, you know, infographics and things like that are much more accessible, and people will be much more willing to read it. And you want to adjust the level of technical information to match your audience. If I was kind of showing, you know, data to, let's say, a group of people who may not be as familiar with like certain types of evaluation, like if I was doing like big, you know, statistical analysis and showing different types of graphs that, you know, would be really confusing for a lot of people, then that may not be the best way to kind of show that information. Focusing on the level of technical difficulty, I think, is really important to make sure that your audience members can understand what you're talking about. And lastly, timing. Timing is everything. So when you are planning on disseminating your report, you want to make sure you have somewhat of a dissemination plan. This can actually happen at the very beginning of when you be evaluating and analyzing, and have this completed. So you know that the best time to release this report would be, in May, and this would be the best time where it would kind of have the most information that we needed from the program, and that we wouldn't miss anything, but that it'd be timely as well, that it's not late, and that people would be looking at it and they would still be able to kind of understand the program and it's not forgotten. Developing a plan to disseminate also may be out of your control. So kind of when you're doing your progress reports, we give you guys pretty strict deadlines, like this is the date that you have to submit it by. That is the same for us, for the CDC. We have to have everything compiled from your end, put it into our reporting tools, and then send it over to CDC by a certain date as well. Understanding when the information will be most useful. So let's say you host a program let's say you host a nutrition program, and it's done over 10 weeks. And then over those 10 weeks, you're collecting all this information with surveys and kind of, responses, and you have all this great data and feedback and all the things that you've done. And then you've wait like 6 months and you don't report it out. You don't give it to any of the stakeholders. It just kind of sits in your computer. That would be a bad use of timing. Just because once you release that information now, it's 6 months late, is kind of, it's not timely anymore. It's moved out of their minds. People have forgotten about it. You want to make sure that you have a kind of a window of staying fresh with the information. Oops. And then also chronologically disseminating your information based upon stakeholder involvement is important as well. So that means just really making sure that you're not reporting information that happens later on, or data that happens later on earlier than the former information. So like if you have let's say for example, at the end of the year, I still haven't released progress report 1 information, but I released progress report 4 or the final reports information. That would be an example of not releasing your data chronologically. You want to make sure that it's done in the way that you've collected it. So in review, you want to collect information and track data is one of the first steps of evaluating a program. Use platforms that are simple and accessible to analyze your data, such as Excel. Formulate your data into quality reports. This could be done in the form of a form report, infographic, success story, any way that you're analyzing data and getting it out to the people. And then lastly, disseminate your evaluation findings thoughtfully, focusing on information type, knowing your audience, and timing. So does anyone have any questions? Did I go too quickly? Any feedback?
I'm just curious to know how people think that they might use some of this stuff in your own programs.
Yeah.
If any of these things, maybe not all of these tools are relevant for what you're doing, but if so, what are they? And then maybe what other tracking would users be interested in learning more about, or
This is Jamali. I really like how you can make the bars or charts from entering on Excel. So definitely looking forward to that training whenever you're doing it.
Yeah. So, I mean, Excel is just so great because, again, it's just on everyone's workstation. We actually had at Crib our own little Excel kind of crash course. Everyone on our team is pretty familiar with Excel, but we just kind of went into deeper more advanced functions and different things that you could do to manipulate the data. And I would say that most of my team members found it pretty helpful.
Eugene, we have in the chat, someone wants to know if there's any software or apps you recommend for this reporting.
So what, kind of where in the reporting? So for tracking and analysis, I would say that Excel can do everything that you need. In the sense of creating a report, I would say, for example, creating an infographic, there are different programs like Bengage or Canva that would be very useful to kind of create a very simple but pretty and communicating your report, and those are like free platforms that you can use. I just typed in the kind of the web links, and then obviously I think that for formal reporting you kind of just use a Microsoft document or whatever tool that is kind of prescribed from above. For us, example, for ACORNS and CITE, we've changed over to like an Excel spreadsheet now. So Teresa Martin says, I really hadn't thought about putting information that I present to the board in a dashboard or graph. I think trying to figure out how to implement that might be a better visual. Yeah, so if we do have, like when we do have a regional training, or if we can kind of get Excel trainings into our regional trainings or somewhere in between, yes, putting in, like infographics and bar charts and kind of those things would be very, they make your report kind of easier to digest, because even if the person reading it is very skilled and kind of is okay reading just through straight content, it's nice to have visual representation to kind of get big ideas and concepts across.
So Eugene, we have one more in the chat. We can use this a lot in programs from ACORNS CITE and our tasks. We are also always doing surveys for different programs. We also are anxious to see another webinar on how to create the Excel dashboards.
Ooh, awesome. Okay. We could definitely.
So maybe it sounds like a webinar might be the better version of this. Some regional trainings already have their schedules set of things, or maybe it's like a dual. So I don't know if people prefer to try to do it in person, or if it's like a webinar would need or like videos or something.
So would people be more receptive to video, or would you want to do a webinar? The pros of a webinar are that it would be, you'd be able to ask questions. With video, you can kind of go at your own pace, but and always be there. But what do people think?
I think webinar, you record it so people can also watch it as a video.
Later on, yeah.
In the chat, we also have in the webinars, they would like to see webinars. Vicky Macias, I think both do the first in the webinar and then you can record it.
Yeah.
That's true. We record all of these too. So.
So maybe we'll just swap out one of our topics of our regular monthly webinars, if that feels okay to people, to so you don't have to add another new date to attend, or would you want to just add it in addition to what we already have planned? You guys have the schedules, and so I don't know what makes most sense for you guys.
This is Jamali. Probably the sooner the better. And Eugene, I may just contact you directly too.
Yeah, thanks, Jamali. Yeah, also, like if you do need to develop a survey and you want it a little bit more, robust, there's more components to it, please feel free to reach out to myself or Al Nino, and we'll get you something that you can, use, and then they can often be used for multiple things as well. They don't have to be just specifically for that event or meeting. It could be kind of universal, and you can use it throughout the entire year. Does anyone have any more questions?
Just something, sorry, just something to add as a little bit of a reminder. Like we are looking into doing this training, it sounds like, but you guys can always do like TA requests too, even after the training. If you guys have more questions, or you're like, hey, I've already checked out the video and I still kind of need help with this thing that's a little bit different. You guys can reach out to us with a TA request, and we can see if we can help you with something a little bit more specific.
Thanks for that, Efrain. Do we send the TA request to Julie?
To Miss Julie Villa, yes. Alrighty, if we don't have any more questions, then I'll hand it back off to Julie. Also, please make sure we're going to be launching our poll questions. often, so this is our kind of feedback survey. So please make sure to answer those questions before you hop off the call.
So before we end, like Eugene says, we have the poll questions that we'd like you to complete. And I will be sending out our news flash that will have all of the links for Eventzilla, so you can register for our annual resource meeting, the BPHI, which is going to be down the grant writing in the Morongo area. And Geneva had mentioned about assistance with some travel dollars. And I can answer those questions in that news flash. Does anyone have anything else or any shout outs that they would like to share right now before we leave? Anyone? We'll have a very fabulous Valentine's Day. And please complete that poll and be safe. I know it's cold and wet outside. Stay bundled up. Ms. Jamali, I see you're nice and bundled up. Stay bundled up, stay safe, and always remember to buckle up.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. I hope it was useful.
Thank you.